בוקר טוב. פרופסור אוריאל רייכמן, נשיא ומייסד של IDC, מר משה פדלון, ראש העיר הרצליה, ברונס מישל קוניקס, Executive Director CTED UN, Mr. J. Tabb, Executive Assistant Director National Security Branch FBI US, and ICT CEO, the only one, Professor Boaz Ganor. בוקר טוב לכולם.
Good morning, everybody.
רק מספר תובנות
Just a few
אחרי 62 שנה
after 60
של חיים ועשייה
of life
בצל הטרור הערבי.
in the
הספירה שלי מתחילה ב-1860,
my question
כאשר ראשוני החלוצים הציוניים היהודים
were the first
הגיעו
Jewish
ארצה והפכו לעובדי אדמה חקלאיים.
and became
הייתה זו חציית קו אדום,
It was a crossing of
שתושבי
the
הארץ
red
הערבים לא
line
רצו להשלים
that
איתה,
the Arab
איתו,
inhabitants would not agree
והם
with,
אחזו בנשק
and
ככנופיות
they took
וניסו לחסל את
arms
הניסיון
and
הציוני
tried
להפוך
to
לחקלאים
liquidate
ועובדי אדמה.
this attempt to become farmers.
היהודים נאלצו להקים כל
The
מיני
Jews
מסגרות
were
כדי
forced
להגן,
to
גם הם
create
בעזרת
all
הנשק,
sorts of systems
על
in order
זכותם
to
לאבד
defend
את האדמה.
with arms their right
זהו
to
בעיניי
work the land.
ראשית
And
ההתמודדות
this, for
עם
me,
הטרור
was the
הפלסטיני
beginning
בארץ
of
ישראל החדשה.
coping with terror in the new land
מלחמת
of
העולם
Israel.
הראשונה,
The First World
שבה
War,
בעלות הברית הכניעו
where the
וחיסלו את
Allies
האימפריה העות'מאנית,
destroyed
חוללה
the
שני
Ottoman
תהליכים
Empire,
מרכזיים
created
בהיסטוריה
two
של המזרח
new
התיכון המודרני.
forces in the modern Middle East.
הסתיימה שליטה
One,
מוסלמית של 1200
the
שנה על
Muslim
המזרח
control
התיכון.
of 1200 years on the Middle
הופיעו
East.
לראשונה ניצנים
Two,
של
there were
לאומיות
the
ערבית
first buds of
שתפקידה היה
Arab
להעביר את
nationalism,
המזרח התיכון
which
מנאמנות
wanted
שבטית
to transfer the Middle East
לנאמנות
from a
לאומית
tribal
מודרנית.
regime to a
תהליך זה
modern
לא
nation
הבשיל
state.
באופן מלא
This
גם
process did not
עד היום
come
הזה.
to be, even to this very day.
גם כאשר קמו מדינות לאום
Even
במזרח
when there were nation states in the Middle East, following the Sykes-Picot agreements from 1916, in many of them, the tribal loyalty continued to control, and this impacted all the historical processes that happened in this part of the world. The Palestinian terror and the Arab terror derived from these tribal regimes in the Middle East. Nation state formed armies in order to defend their interests. The nation state that was formed by terror militias got the title of terrorist supporting states. A classic case study to test this thesis. Anybody who fought against the establishment of the State of Israel were in those days called the Arab gangs, and they identified with their tribe and family, but also identified with the Arab nation and not with an Arab state. In the land of Israel at the time, there was a struggle between the family or tribe of the Husseini and the tribe of the Nashashibi. The first ones won this struggle because of the extreme position that they held against the Jews. All or nothing. The Nashashibis were ready to accept the UN Declaration of the State of Israel. And if you study our War of Independence, you understand that this was a war between an Israeli military in the making and gangs or terror groups where their doctrines were terroristic, to kill civilians, sniping, mortars, shells. I skip to the spring revolutions of 2010 and onward. This was a futile attempt by the younger generation that were fed up with the totalitarian regime and tried to bring to the Middle East the nation states and to bring the democratic tidings. If, to quote Thomas Friedman from the New York Times, the spring revolutions managed to go up to the height of the minarets of the mosques. In other words, instead of democracy, they brought to the Middle East the Muslim Sharia regime and radical Islam like ISIS and others who represent a religious nihilism involved with suicide as a religious decree.
The revolution against the Shah in Iran in 1979 led to a non-violent coup and the regime of the mullahs, and since they were in regime they have adopted terrorism as a way of combating everyone around them. And at the days of Ataturk, Turkey went under a reform by dividing the state and religion and becoming a Western country. This era ended with Erdogan's taking of the regime, overtaking of the regime, and very confidently he is taking Turkey back to the days of Sharia. And the reasons, there are two of them. Turkey did not accept the destruction of the Muslim regime, and they were not accepted to the EU, so therefore Erdogan thought that bringing Islam back to Turkey at the same time as turning it into a regional Sunni superpower that is competing with Shiite Iran. Against this backdrop, the Muslim terrorism that began as secular and has turned religious is now everywhere, not only in the Middle East. And you must remember, religious conflicts since the dawn of time have been conflicts, the violence of which always reinvents new peaks and new records, and they have no political resolution. And why? Because first of all, Islam as a religion does not acknowledge others' right to exist, and also you can maybe win an army, but you cannot win a religious faith and belief. And therefore we find ourselves in Herzliya year after year to try and think of something to do. What else is left that we have not done in order to overcome this problem that is called fundamentalist Islam and terrorism? And I would like to convey the message that we must combat terrorism unrelentingly. But the Palestinian neighbors also need to be talked about. We need to talk peace with them as well at the same time. I hope you enjoy this conference, and perhaps we can make another step forward in finding the key to the solution of this enigma that's called radical Islamic terrorism. Thank you very much.